Are you planning to rent an apartment in Germany? The rental process can be very tricky, especially if you're not familiar with the legal points in your rental agreement. So stick around, I will break down the key things that you should definitely look out for before signing your rental contract. This could save you money, stress, and potentially legal trouble. The Mietvertrag, that is the rental contract, is the single most important document that you will sign while renting an apartment. It is legally binding, so it is very important that you read all the points and make sure that you understand what you're agreeing to. Here's what you should look out for. Number one, limited or unlimited term contracts. Most rental contracts in Germany are unlimited. However, there are also some fixed term contracts known as befristeter Mietvertrag. Be sure to check what kind of contract you're signing. Number two, notice periods, called as Kündigungsfrist. Most tenants have typically 3 months notice period to rent a rental contract, but make sure that you read what is the end date. Like sometimes it is that it has to be 3 months from the beginning of the month. So if you are putting down the notice period in the middle of February, then the 3 months will start from March and not from the time you start your notice period. Pay attention to the clauses that can limit you from leaving early, because some contracts also have a clause where it says you have to find a Nachmieter. Nachmieter means you have to find a tenant that can take over your contract and only then you can leave. So some rental contracts have this clause, but some don't. But typically, like I said, most rental contracts have a 3-month notice period, which typically begins at the beginning of the month. And if there are some more specific clauses in your rental contract that, a notice period can only be started if you email the landlord by the 15th of the month, or it only starts if you physically post your resignation to the landlord and they receive it within a certain date, only then it is valid. So it really depends on contract to contract. So be very careful and read carefully. Make sure that you understand the clause of your Kündigungsfrist notice period. Next, let's talk about money. Your rent may include additional costs known as Nebenkosten, and there is typically a cold rent and warm rent. Now, what does this mean? Let me explain. Cold rent means the basic rent of your apartment, and warm rent includes additional costs like heating costs, warm water, garbage disposal, and sometimes internet. Make sure you understand what is included, and you always pay all these additional costs in advance, and at the end of the year the landlord will calculate your actual usage, and then based on that, either you will have to pay more if you used more than what was estimated, then you have to pay more at the end of the year, and if you used less than what was estimated, then you will receive some money back from your landlord. Check for any unclear fees in your contract, like maintenance charges, administrative charges. Make sure that you know what you're paying for and ask your landlord for clarifications if necessary. Now let's talk about our next point that you should look carefully for is the Kaution, that is the security deposit. There is a maximum limit of how much security deposit that your landlord can expect from you legally, and it is 3 times the cold rent of the apartment. Landlords cannot demand more than that, and you have a legal right to pay it in 3 installments, so you do not have to pay it all at once. And there is one more thing that not many people are aware of, and I think that every one of us who are renting apartments should use this to our advantage, is deposit protection. So you can either transfer the deposit to the landlord's bank account, which what everyone normally does. But what we could also have a right to is to have deposit protection. So the landlord must keep your deposit in a separate bank account and cannot use it unless you cause damage. And once the rental contract ends, then this account will be closed and the money will be transferred to you. This way of deposit protection, neither the landlord nor you can use this deposit. It will always be protected, and once the account is closed, the money will go into your bank account. So the landlord cannot deny that. So please be aware that you can ask for deposit protection and have your deposit secured in a bank account. Next important point that you should look out for is maintenance and repairs. Now, if there are repairs and something is broken in your apartment, whose responsibility it is? Well, it depends on your contract. Some contracts may have a clause that claim that the tenants have to take care of minor repairs. Now, what can be considered minor repairs? It is usually repairs that cost around 100 to 150, but it again depends on what is specifically mentioned in your rental contract. Major repairs, the landlord is usually responsible for any structural damage or any heating related issues or any major repairs that cannot just be solved within 150 euros. Your landlord should be taking care of it. Tenants are not responsible for normal wear and tear. So for example, if you've lived several years in an apartment and the paint is faded out, tenants are not responsible for that unless it is specifically mentioned in your rental contract. There is a clause that before moving out, the tenants need to repaint everything. Then of course you're responsible for it. But if it is not mentioned in your contract, then and you lived in an apartment just for 1 year, then it is most likely that you will not have to repaint the apartment. While talking about maintenance, let's also talk about renovation. Your German contract will most likely include a clause which will mention about renovations that you need to do before you move in and before you move out. Some apartments, like I mentioned before, require to be painted before you move out, while some others don't. However, landlords cannot demand renovations that go beyond the normal wear and tear. For example, if there is a clause that you have to paint the apartment with a very specific color of the paint, then it might be invalid under the German law. Next point you should look out for is subletting rules called as Untermiete. You can't just do that without your landlord's permission. Subletting requires landlord's written consent. Unauthorized subletting can result to eviction. And it brings us to our next point, eviction and termination. German law protects the tenants. Landlord requires a very solid reason to end your unlimited contract, such as personal use or serious breach of the agreement from your side. Eviction process includes court order. Your landlord cannot just lock you out or throw your things out. And also the legal termination of rental contract takes time. Once the landlord gives you a court order that they need the apartment for their own personal use, you will be still given several months of notice to find yourself another apartment. So do not worry in such cases. Other thing that I would like to mention is that if the landlord is selling your apartment, what happens then? Again, German rental law protects you. So even if the landlord sells your apartment, the person that the apartment is being sold to will now become your landlord, and you will still continue to be the tenant. Unless they intend to use it for personal use, then they will have to send you a court notice. But again, this process can take a long time and you will receive information along the way. It will sometimes take from several months to a year. So it still gives you enough time to find another apartment. So there you have it. The key things that you should definitely know before you sign your rental contract. Understanding your rights and your rental contract can save you so much stress and can also protect you from future disputes. If you have any questions or tips regarding renting in Germany, please drop them in the comment below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more tips and tricks about living in Germany. Until next time, ciao!